We have in Europe, in Cyprus, in many surrounding countries, very short maternity leave, and lots of women have to return, maybe not as short as in the
Yeah, I was
United
gonna
States.
say, yeah, I don't think you're gonna win on that one.
Yes, but you are an expert, so we're asking you,
Yes,
what are
yes.
your most important advices for women who return back to work after 18, 20 weeks
Right.
postpartum,
Well,
and they need to organize all the process. They need
yes.
to prepare the baby, the
Mhm.
food for baby,
Mhm.
caretakers. They need to
Yeah.
organize everything. So what are your advices for them?
Okay. All right. Well, what I think is most important is that they plan, like every new parent, to nurse very intensively during the first 40 days. That's like a sort of a magical period of time where the baby is really doing everything they can to boost the milk production up where it needs to be for the long term. So those first 40 days are a very intense period. So, I like parents to think about that as sort of a crisis time where they're just going to be focused on the baby. They're going to be nursing. If they can get meals from family members and friends, that's really good. Make sure they have a support person available. Hopefully they have a partner who can help them. But it's that very intensive nursing in the beginning that really sets the milk production at the level that you're going to need it over the long term. What I usually suggest, if they want to start expressing milk, that they wait until the baby's at least a month old before they do that. Now, ideally, I think what should happen is maybe they start expressing about a month before they're going back to work. So if they're going back to work, let's say at 4.5 months, that would mean they would start at maybe 3.5 months to express the milk. If they express maybe 30 minutes to 60 minutes after the first morning nursing, if they're double pumping, they'll probably get, if they're average, about half a feeding. And if they combine like 2 days together to make a whole feeding, a feeding on average for a nursing baby of that age is somewhere between 90 and 120 milliliters. So we would say 3 to 4 ounces. So, having quantities like that would actually, if they did that for a month, they would have maybe 14, 15, feeds frozen in their freezer. But they, in an ideal world, they don't necessarily need to use that every day. When they go back to work, if they're able to express their milk at work, they should be able to get enough milk during their workday for the next day, which is ideal. Because when you are going back to work, you want to first use whatever fresh or refrigerated milk you have, because that's going to be better for the baby, and keep the frozen milk as sort of a backup in case of emergency. So if they, for example, if they spill their milk one day or something, then they've got the frozen milk as a backup. But they don't need to be intensively pumping the whole time they're on maternity leave. I think they should think about their maternity leave as like a special bubble, a period of time where they can get in sync with their baby and they can focus on their baby. There's going to be plenty of time for pumping and all of that later on. But I think that's important for getting off to a good start. As far as keeping the milk production going long term, I have a concept that I call the magic number. And what the magic number is it varies from person to person. It's the number of times a day you need to remove the milk in order to keep your milk production stable over the long term. And so for some, I would say an average magic number would be 6 or 7. And so what sometimes happens, what I found over time, is that parents start to, again, apply bottle feeding norms to breastfeeding, and they don't really apply. So for example, a bottle feeding baby from 4 to 6 months might be taking a very large bottle, like a 6 or 8 ounce bottle, and they might be feeding fewer times a day. That is not the way nursing babies typically act. Usually, they need to feed more often and have smaller volumes. And that's also one of the reasons why they're less likely to become obese and overweight. So it's actually very good for them. But with the magic number, you have to add together the number of times you pump each day with the number of times you nurse. So here in the US, what happens often is that maybe the baby gets overfed when the mother's at work. And then when they're home together, now the baby's really not that interested in nursing. So you want to make sure that the baby's not overfed when you're at work, one way to do that is to do a technique called paced bottle feeding. And I can provide you with a link to a free handout I have on that. And that involves slowing down the bottle feeding to make it more like nursing, so babies are happy with less milk. That also takes the pressure off of working mothers to come up with, huge volumes of milk when they're away from their baby, because some have told me, they need half as much milk when the bottle feedings are paced compared to, if the baby's on their back and, the bottle's
Yes,
just
exactly.
tilted at an angle like that. So paced bottle feeding, making sure that they have enough milk removals every day. Like I say, 6 or 7 is an average, but it depends on a variable that we call the storage capacity, which can vary a lot from person to person. That's how much milk the breast can comfortably hold at its fullest time of the day. So that's going to vary. So for some, it might actually be fewer than 6, but for some, it might be more than 7. So they'll notice. So for example, if they go below their magic number, what will happen is the milk production will start to go down and they'll get less milk. So then that'll tell them, oh, they need to increase the number of milk removals per day.
Yes. So this is very typical question we get from mothers, how to keep the milk supply steady over the whole period of breastfeeding, because they start breastfeeding very actively and then they complain that I don't have milk anymore. I went back to office and my pediatrician said that I need to supplement with formula.
Right. And a lot of that, again, has to do with the fact that we have these bottle feeding norms in our head. And we think, oh, well, as my baby gets older, he needs to feed less times a day. And then they cut down on the feedings, and that causes the milk production to drop. Because milk production is really based on, how many times a day the milk is removed and how well it's removed. And so, if they start decreasing that, then they're actually causing it, not on purpose. Because again, they're thinking, oh, well, this is a normal thing for my baby, and it really isn't if you're nursing. So really, it's important for parents to understand the difference between bottle feeding norms and nursing norms.
Yes. And again, parents who go back to work, mothers, they often have partners. And in some societies, women believe that if they breastfeed, their partner is not involved. So it's not like bottle feeding that you can give a bottle to a father and father is a proper father, he participates. So what do you advise to partners of breastfeeding women, how to make this participation active and fathering so active? What does it mean to be a breastfeeding father?
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, it certainly, a father doesn't have to bottle feed to get close to his baby and to be a support to his partner. I mean, there's a lot of ways that fathers can be actively involved. I mean, one of the things that helps babies really get to know their father is skin to skin contact. And so, for example, after a nursing session, the father can put the baby on his chest. The baby just is in a diaper and the father has his shirt open. The baby can smell him, really get to know him. The father's voice is often very, very soothing because it's deeper. The father, a lot of times fathers say, well, I don't want to be just stuck with the changing diapers, because obviously that's not the most pleasant part of caring for a baby, but there's so many other ways, walking the baby. But that body contact with the father, I think that's actually much more significant than bottle feeding would be. And that's not to say, I mean, that if a couple is breastfeeding, that the father couldn't bottle feed. I mean, if he really wants to, he could certainly do that from time to time. But the problem, if you want to exclusively breastfeed, which a lot of families do these days, that if the father, for example, is giving a bottle a day, that puts a lot of extra work onto the nursing mother. And then she's got to pump maybe twice a day in order to provide a bottle for the father to feed it. A lot of times parents start that way and then they realize, oh my gosh, this is so much work. I don't really need to be doing this. And so, because as I say, you really want, especially if you're going back to work, you want that period of time at home to be this special bubble where you could just focus on your baby and not be pumping like crazy, like you're going to have to do later. I don't know too many women who enjoy pumping. So it's, I think the more you can minimize that, when you're at home, the better.
Yes, yes. Again, working families. We have people who work a lot, who come home and they have children, breastfeeding children.
Yes.
And then they usually complain that they cannot get a proper sleep at night. They don't know how to organize the sleep together or separately. Lots of people are afraid of co-sleeping. And they feel exhausted, they feel sleep deprived, and they feel like they need to stop. They don't have forces, support, internal strength, and information to go on. What do you advise to such parents?
Well, I would say, first of all, it sounds like there's an underlying assumption there that stopping breastfeeding is going to mean the baby's going to sleep. And
Exactly.
I don't think that that's the case at all. I mean, that's never been my experience. I remember my daughter-in-law's sister, I was helping her because she had not succeeded with breastfeeding with her first child, but with her second child, we got breastfeeding going really well. She loved it. And when her baby was 17 months old, she said to me, you know, I'm ready to wean now because I really want to get more sleep at night. And I said, the first thing I said to her was, well, first of all, you have to know there's no guarantee that this baby's going to sleep more just because you wean. And she said, okay, well, that's fine, but I'm ready anyway. So she did. And what did she discover? She discovered the baby was still waking at night. Now she had to get up with the baby. She had to provide, you know, drinks and food. And it was just, you know, it actually made her life more complicated. So, you know, what I would say, when I'm helping families who are struggling with sleep issues, you know, what I usually focus on is trying to sort out how they can meet their baby's needs at night with the least disruption of sleep. And, you know, a lot of families are very uncomfortable with the idea of co-sleeping, but there's actually alternatives to that that keep the baby close and make it possible, you know, to get more sleep. Like, for example, in some families, what they do is they attach the crib to the parent's bed and they take off the side that is between the parent and the baby. So the baby has his own bed, but then at night they can just pull him in and put him back, and, you know, or, you know, a cradle or whatever. But, you know, there's lots of different ways. Actually, in the US here, our American Academy of Pediatrics strongly recommends that parents keep the babies in their bedroom for at least the first year, because that's been found to reduce sudden infant death syndrome. But, you know, there's other things too. Like, for example, if you didn't have a crib, you could put a pallet or a mattress on the floor next to the parent's bed. The mother could go down and nurse, you know, and come back to bed. There's just lots of different alternatives. But I think the main idea is you want to come up with a plan that's going to help you get the most amount of sleep that you can with the minimum of disruptions. And what most families, like, I wrote a book called Working and Breastfeeding Made Simple. And some of the experiences that were shared, this is so true, I've seen this over and over, is that, you know, as the baby goes through different developmental stages, what works is going to change. And so parents need to be flexible, you know, and try different things and see what works at each stage of development. So, you know, this idea that just because you wean, the baby's going to sleep, I think is a totally wrong idea, because babies, especially like between 6 and 12 months, it's like they're going through these developmental phases that wake them up at night. You know, they learn to crawl, and they're crawling when they're half asleep, and they're, you know, it's waking them up. There's just all these different reasons that they wake up. And for many, like I said, I found nursing at that stage actually gave me a lot more sleep than if I'd had to get up with a baby who wasn't nursing. So yeah, I guess it all depends on your point of view.
Yes, exactly.
I think one of the strategies that I hear a lot here, at least in Cyprus, is that many couples, they give formula for night sleep. Basically, it's like a strategy. Baby will sleep longer hours.
Yeah, well, that actually, the research does not bear that out. I mean, basically, you know, what they're doing is they're increasing their baby's health risk, but they may not really be getting that much out of it. You know, I spoke at a conference with one of the premier sleep researchers in the world. Her name is Dr. Helen Ball, and she's from the UK. And she's basically said, you know, there really isn't a difference in how much formula-fed babies sleep compared to breastfed babies. But the formula-fed babies are at higher risk for sudden infant death syndrome, in part because they do sometimes go into a deeper sleep that's actually not necessarily healthy for them. But they have a website at the University of Durham. It's let's see, I'm not sure I can remember it exactly, but their organization's BASIS, BASIS.
I'll
Is it
put in the
baselisonline.org?
note. Yeah.
But there's a lot of information on that for parents. They even have a free app where you can put in your baby's sleep pattern and see how it compares to other babies your baby's age, to see if your baby's sleep patterns are normal for that age. And it's all research based. It's really, really good information.
Wow, great.
Yes.
I wish I knew it 3 years ago.
Yeah.
When I was struggling with sleep and thinking, oh my God, I'm the only one.
I know. And that's one of the reasons why peer support is so important, because that is like the most important thing is having contact with other nursing families and understanding what's normal at different ages and stages.
But very often you have contacts with families who mixed feed
or bottle feed,
and they are sure that this was the breaking point,
Again, we're coming back to the idea of expectations, and
Right.
it feels like many women, especially the women who have their kids at the age of 30, 40, they already get used to this specific level of life quality. I sleep well, I rest well, I have my own time. They sort of not ready. We are not ready that breastfeeding can take so much time at the very beginning. So the baby is always, let's say, on my breast with you.
Keep in mind that in the beginning, they're supposed to be resting and recovering from childbirth. So these first 40 days that I was talking about when breastfeeding is so intense is a time that they're not supposed to be going out and about, because that could actually cause physical problems for them. They really need to take good care of themselves during that time. And so I really don't see these as incompatible. We talked earlier about going back to work. If someone can go back to work, and breastfeed, there's no reason why somebody maybe who doesn't have to go back to work can't have an active social life, when they get past this period of recovery. So I don't see those things as incompatible at all. But I think, I will admit, I think for all of us, no matter what age we have our first child, it is a huge shock to find out, how much time and attention newborns take. Like I say, there's no individual on the planet that's more high maintenance than a newborn. It is a huge shock, but I don't really think that's necessarily related to how you feed a baby. I think that's true in either case.
Yes,
that's true.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I love your metaphor about this bubble for the 30, 40 days, which actually also, we have expectation that I just had a delivery. I just, and I need to jump to something immediately.
You know that in some traditions, not so much in Cyprus, but in Greece, they observe 40 days after delivery. They usually stay at home. They don't go out. Some people believe that it's very outdated.
It's not.
It's logic.
Not. And it's not just in Greece. It's also in China. It was in America back in the colonial days. It's something we need to get back to because it's really important, I think, for the health of women in general. Because what happens if you try to get back to quote unquote normal too quickly is you can hemorrhage, you can develop all kinds of physical problems. It's not healthy. So I think, if it's something that seems old fashioned, it's one of those old fashioned things we need to readopt into our lives.
Yeah, like public breastfeeding.
Right, exactly.
True.
Lots of women who express milk in order to go out and sit down in the cafe. It's tremendous work for them because it's an extra effort, and they feel like they will be judged, they will be misunderstood, they might be expulsed from the shopping mall or whatever. What do you advise usually to mothers who have such worries?
Well, I think that this is actually the job of you, the breastfeeding supporters, to help with the societal expectations. I know here in the United States, we actually have laws that say anywhere that a mother is allowed to be, she's allowed to nurse her baby. And there were some communities, they had giant cardboard cutout photos of mothers nursing that they would put all around town to kind of get people adjusted or used to the idea of seeing a nursing mother. It's some of it, I used to nurse in public myself when mine were little. A lot of times people can't even really tell what you're doing. They sometimes think that the baby's just sleeping in your arms. Obviously, dressing in such a way that you're not exposing yourself is helpful. You know, if you wore a one-piece dress, for example, that would be impossible. But you know, it's, I think my feeling is the more that women do it, the more people are going to get used to it, and the less likely those kinds of things are to happen. But you know, one of the things you two could certainly do as breastfeeding supporters is see if there's some way to talk to the legislators there and make it you know, from a legal standpoint, you know, not illegal to breastfeed it, and make sure that information gets out there. We actually, some groups here in the US created little cards, like business cards, where it said on there, like a mother could give to a shop owner, that says, you know, our law says that it's legal to breastfeed in public, and just to help educate people. But yeah, it's a problem. I mean, when I started, my first one was born in 1980. And back then it really was an issue to sort of try to figure out how to navigate this. You know, you don't want to make people feel uncomfortable. You know, sometimes I would go, you know, in a more private place to nurse. But ultimately, I think what we want to do, if we want our culture to be really breastfeed friendly, is we want to make it so that, you know, mothers feel like they can comfortably nurse anywhere that they are.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think especially with the question that it feels like the average sort of age when the woman becomes a mother, it's getting a little bit higher. So it's maybe 30s, 40s.
Same here,
when she already might be get used to very social life, going out, etc. And now suddenly she finds herself locked in a, you know, locked in a room or at home, because you basically go outside with your child.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you my personal story. When I was the first one in my family to nurse a baby in 3 generations. Neither my mother nor my grandmother had nursed. And so when we started having holiday gatherings, I was told that I should go into the back room to nurse when my baby wanted to nurse, because after all, my brothers were there, who, by the way, were adults and married at the time. And so at first I did that, but my first child he was the sort that whenever there was a lot of stimulation around, he just wanted to nurse a lot. So I was in the back bedroom, you know, for most of the evening. And I thought to myself, this is ridiculous. And so, you know, as I continued on and had more children, you know, first I came out, I had like a blanket that I put over so nobody could see anything. Eventually the blanket went away. And I remember when my youngest brother brought a friend over to my parents' house with a newborn, and they said to him, "Oh, just go ahead and sit down and nurse. We're used to that here." And I thought, oh my gosh, I guess somebody had to do it. Yeah. But like I say, that's what it takes. It takes people just getting used to seeing it and realizing this is just a normal way to feed a baby.
This is just eating.